Today, guys, we are talking about the Panasonic 24mm SF1.8 prime lens and why I initially am so excited about this lens. Today, we are doing an initial impressions review of the Panasonic 24mm f1.8 S Prime lens. I'm pretty excited about this one. Guys, today we're just doing an initial impressions type video. I've got my notebook here today. We're gonna be looking through some of my notes. This is not an extensive review. I've only had this lens for a couple of weeks, and frankly, I've honestly shot, even in that couple of weeks, less with this lens than I was kind of hoping to. Dad life and all of the music stuff that I keep talking about, of course, is still going on. But this lens, I'm really initially excited about. And I think kind of just to start this video, you know, I really want to make this lens to document this moment in time, because I think that there's a really good chance that this lens might be my new favorite lens of all time with my S5. And I think that there's a really good chance that this lens lives on my S5 more than any other lens. My other favorite lens is the Sigma 28-70, which we're gonna talk a lot about in this video. And again, my kind of emotional gut check kind of feeling is that this lens could be the new lens that almost never comes off my camera, because I just love using it so much for the kind of things I like to use my Panasonic S5 for, which is run and gun, photography, videography, YouTube type videos. I think this lens could be that lens. My rational, you know, thinking brain side says, no, this lens is fantastic, be excited about it, you're gonna use it a lot, but you know, you're gonna go back to the Sigma 28-70 as kind of your default lens. But I just wanna put this out there because I wanna circle back on this video, you know, look at all these points that we talked about, look at the predictions that I made kind of going forward with this lens, and seeing, did this lens live on my camera like I thought that it has the potential to do? We'll circle back to that. Okay, so again, I don't have anything super scripted today. Let's just kind of open up the notebook and talk about this lens. Now, for starters, I am filming this video on this lens. We're doing it right here, and we're using autofocus. Now, with this lens in particular, we're shooting at f1.8, we're wide open. You know, we should, I mean, I don't have much of a background because I painted that wall black, but we should have blurry backgrounds with this lens, and autofocus, you know, with a Panasonic, this shouldn't be good. So I don't know how it's been doing so far. I've been impressed with the autofocus. It's actually been really good. The motor is really silent. We'll talk about that. But I'm gonna try autofocus just for the sake of this video. Typically this lens is total, I mean, I can touch the lens right there. This lens is within reach. Oh, dropped my bookmark. This lens, hey, that might've been a good autofocus test. This lens is within reach, so for me, setting up manual focus for a video like this lens is gonna be perfect for that. I'm gonna use it all the time. Again, I think I'm gonna use this lens all the time. So that is something that I really like about this lens. It's easy to set autofocus. It's a nice wide lens, it's close. That will be the case, but for this video, we're trying autofocus. We're shooting 24 frames per second. We'll see how that goes. Again, I'll review the footage. Maybe I'll put some notes like I like to do as I'm doing a video like this, and saying, hey, autofocus sucks right here, because, you know, in case you didn't notice, it's usually pretty obvious. Other piece of context with this lens. This lens really attracted me to it because, again, for those of you who don't know, I started out with Panasonic Micro Four Thirds type cameras and lenses, super small cameras. Loved that setup. Wanted to test out full frame and bought a Sony a7 III. And, you know, TLDR, when it comes to that kind of setup, I had the Tamron 28-75 and the G Master 24mm prime. And I loved both of those lenses, and I love the Sony a7 III. The reason I switched back to the S5, if you haven't watched any of my other videos, is because I just did not like anything about the video quality coming from the Sony. It was good, it wasn't bad, you know, I mean, to most people, you wouldn't care about it, but for me, having shot Panasonic cameras before, and just loving the log profiles and really thinking that they're so easy to use, I wanted to go back to a Panasonic full frame camera, which is why we're here today. With the S5, I have the 28-70 Sigma lens, which has filled that hole in my heart for the Tamron 28-75 that I had with the Sony setup. And that lens is a fantastic lens. I love it. I use it all the time. I did not have a 24 millimeter G Master replacement, and so this lens caught my eye because I thought, you know what, it's even smaller, it's even lighter, it's not quite as wide on the aperture, so it can't go to, I think the G Master was a 1.4, this is a 1.8, still really close, really good, really bright, and tons of bokeh in the background. Could this lens replace that? So I bought this lens under that context, and really now I'm kind of, you know, essentially fully back to where I started, but just with Panasonic gear. I've got a 24 millimeter prime that's really fast. I love that. And I've got my standard zoom that's lightweight and also a 2.8 all the way through, which is really important. So why do I love this lens after all of that backstory? First and foremost, the note that I have here, this lens is really small and really light. Having come from Micro Four Thirds, I've constantly been kind of in this weird zone of seeing if there was any possible way to shoot full frame and not have to lug around massive lenses. And you know, like the 28-70 is a great example. And this lens is a great example. It's ridiculously lightweight. It feels so good on the S5, just where the focus ring is and where the autofocus manual focus switch is. This lens I just love it. It's lightweight. It feels almost like shooting with a Micro Four Thirds setup, even a Micro Four Thirds prime, in that the size and weight is not that much more, but you're getting all of the awesome advantages of full frame, and that you get really good bokeh, which is a ton of fun to play around with, and you get really good low light, which, you know, for just a little bit more weight, it's kind of in that sweet spot where it's bigger, but it's not so much bigger that it's like, gosh, it's not even worth it. I'd rather have Micro Four Thirds gear. This lens fits kind of the Jake Felzine checkbox of, you know, big and very capable, but not big at all. In fact, it's totally small enough to be fantastic. And that is exactly why I love this lens. Second note that I had jotted down, excellent build, yet really light. Again, super small, super compact, very plasticky feeling, but it doesn't feel cheap. It feels very well built, and it shouldn't. It was an expensive lens, but again, I just love lenses that are lightweight, compact, but feel like they were built to take a beating. It's got the weather sealing. It's, you know, it's supposedly freeze proof, which we will test this winter when we go snowmobiling. You can count on that. Excellent build quality, lightweight. You know, this camera, this lens, I would throw in a backpack. I'd throw anywhere, I'd take anywhere, and not be too worried that it's gonna just break. You know, it feels like it's well built. So yeah, that was point number 2. Point number 3 of why I'm loving this lens so far, 24 for photos, 24 millimeters is like, I should preface this, 24 millimeters with a wide aperture is one of my favorite focal lengths to take pictures with. There's something about, I mean, I love obviously a wide focal length for wildlife, or not wildlife, but for nature type stuff. You know, that's what I like to film. And so having a wide lens is perfect for that because it captures the landscapes. You know, it's a landscape type lens. So that obviously is a reason to like it. But when it comes to kind of getting more creative with a lens like this, you have that really shallow aperture, so you can get kind of unique portraits, and you can get kind of unique nature shots where you can isolate certain things and have blurry backgrounds. And I really like that. There's some, you know, when having used the G Master with the Sony in the past, this lens is very much bringing me back to those feelings. And there was just something about that combo that I always felt really creative, and I just love taking pictures with it. And this lens is definitely in that sweet spot. Okay, let's see, 1, 2, 3, we're on 4. The fourth thing that I wrote down, this lens with the Panasonic S5 is just sick because of APS-C mode. Now, the Sony had this, and again, I'm kind of repeating some of my feelings towards the Sony lens, but with this lens, and this camera, you have what's called APS-C mode. And what happens is the sensor is so big and the resolution is big enough that if you crop in to what's called APS-C, which is essentially a 1.5 times crop, you still get 4K video. So with this lens in particular, you have at your fingertips a 24 millimeter nice wide focal length that is 4K, or you can crop into that APS-C or Super 35 mode, which is, you know, essentially turning this lens into roughly a 35 millimeter lens. And so you kind of have two for video. Again, for photo, not so much. You'd just be cropping, and you're just going from, you know, 24 megapixels to whatever that would be with the crop. But for video, you're getting 4K in both modes. So the quality is still, as far as I can tell, the same. I've never really felt like the Super 35 mode is poor quality with this camera, but you crop in there. So now you have a 24 millimeter lens and a 35 millimeter lens for video. And those are like, I mean, both of those focal lengths, I can do just about anything but ridiculous sports and ridiculous wildlife. And if you guys know me, that's not really my cup of tea. So I love this lens because I kind of get two lenses with one in video, and I don't even have to change them. So love that feature. I literally wrote down here like APS-C mode with this lens equals sick. I'm a dad. 3, 4, 5. Low light. I've kind of already touched on this one. It's worth calling out. I went out and shot a fire that I had the other night, and like the low light is incredible. You could literally see stars in the video mode with the moon out, for, you know, which is just crazy. In, you know, I'm in kind of the city. I don't live in like downtown, but I live, you know, in the city. And yeah, like low light's incredible. This lens is amazing. And again, this camera's amazing because it's got dual ISO, so you can go up to that 4,000, you know, 5,000, 6,400, whatever ISO, and you're gonna get incredible low light. This lens is gonna give you incredible low light, fantastic. Let's see, and the last one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, autofocus not terrible, silent motor. Now again, I don't know how the autofocus has been doing. I'm looking at it right now. I think it's doing okay. I don't think it's doing fantastic. Again, this isn't like an amazing point, but the thing that I like about it is the motor is dead silent. Every Sigma lens that I've used, the motor has been at least what I would say feelable or hearable. You know, you can kind of tell that it's focusing. This lens, you can't even tell. And you know, for video, not my cup of tea. I don't really use continuous autofocus for video. I've talked about this a lot. It's just not something that I do. I don't know, maybe if it's good enough on this lens, I'll do it just because why not? But we'll see. But for photos, I do use it. And I've just found that like for photos, it's so quiet, so fast, so responsive that, you know, again, like thinking about this winter when I want to go snowmobiling, I want my dad to rip by me and I want to just burst photos. I've got confidence in that this lens will follow him and focus and have everything be tack sharp, and that's really exciting. So I wrote that down. Silent motor doesn't feel like it's really, you know, throwing itself around. This is a great feature, you know, can't complain there. And it's worth calling out because I wasn't sure what to expect there because I've been kind of hit and miss. I use a lot of Sigma lenses now because I'm, you know, using the L mount, and some of those Sigma lenses, the focus motors, I mean, you can hear it. It's obnoxious. Anyway, that is all of the notes that I had today. Who should buy this lens? Now, again, we're going to circle back. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to confirm or deny that I still feel this way, but here's who I think should buy this lens. And I also want to just call out that Panasonic makes this lens, which is a 24 millimeter. They also make a 35, a 50, and an 85. They're all the exact same size. I think they're all very similar in weight, and they have the same filter thread. They're incredible lenses. And so the first person that I wrote down here that I think should consider buying these lenses based on my opinion is, do you have a favorite prime focal length, and are you using an S5 or, you know, any of the Panasonic cameras? If that's the case, think about those focal lengths. I just listed the 4 that they have, which are super common focal lengths that everyone loves. You know, some people love to shoot 50, some people love 35, which is you know, a focal length that everyone loves. Again, 24 is kind of my favorite. So if that's you, buy your favorite prime and stick it on this camera, and you'll probably just fall in love with it like I have and use it all of the time. It's super lightweight, it's fantastic. You know, if you've got a favorite prime focal length, I would say try it out with one of these S Prime lenses. I don't think you'll regret it. I haven't so far. The second person who should buy this lens is probably a gimbal user. Now, you guys know me, I'm not big on gimbals. I do pretty much all of this stuff completely by myself because that's kind of how I think it's fun. So I don't use a lot of gimbals, but if you were a gimbal user, these lenses are awesome because they all weigh and feel, you know, essentially the same from what I've read. So if you wanted good prime lenses, again, with pretty decent autofocus from what I can tell, and you're shooting with the S5, you know, and a small gimbal, I think these lenses would be a great argument because honestly, in my experience with gimbals, and the reason I don't like using them is because they're clunky, they're hard to bring, you have to rebalance them all the time. Shooting with a zoom lens where the, you know, the lens comes in and out, anytime you change the focal length, you got to rebalance. And in some ways, that's probably more painful than just switching the lens because rebalancing can be a real pain in the butt. I hate rebalancing gimbals. And so, yeah, if you're a gimbal loser, if you're a gimbal loser, no, I know. I said I don't like gimbals. I don't mean that. If you're a gimbal user, I think these lenses have a real advantage for you to consider. So, other person who should buy this lens, and again, I don't have any samples of this, but if you're looking for a small astrophotography lens, just like the G Master, I think this lens is going to be absolutely perfect. Again, like I called out in the video, I was seeing stars in video mode, so I can only imagine what I'm going to be able to get with astrophotography, which again, I haven't gotten a chance to go out into, you know, the deep of Idaho like I like to do and take astro photos. That will happen. And again, we'll talk about that in the circle video when I come back around to all these points, but I can't imagine that this lens is going to suck at that because I think it's just going to be fantastic, and we will talk about that. So this has been my initial thoughts, my initial impressions of this lens, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else to call out from here. Probably not. If if you haven't seen the video that I shot, I've been putting B-roll in this video of those clips, but if you haven't watched the video I made of shooting the fire with this lens, go check it out. Again, super impressed. I will say that video I shot with a ProMIS filter, so it is got a little bit of a dreamy effect, maybe not quite as tack sharp. But yeah, this lens is sweet. So anyway, guys, that's all I've got for my notes today. This is just an initial thoughts. Kind of got lengthy. That's okay. You know, it's a sweet lens. I'm really excited about it. So I will catch you guys in the next one, and stay tuned. Again, subscribe because I will circle back on this lens after I've used it for, you know, several months and talk about, you know, where it sits in my rank versus the famed 28-70 that had so obviously been #1 for such a long time with the L mount, but I think this is a contender. So anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, and have a great night. Day. I don't know when you're watching this. It's late.